And by the way, the sister about whom I'm speaking happens to be new to Islam. In any case, alhamdulillah, she clearly understood some very major issues about the aqidah, the belief of a Muslim, and she shared them with her child. And so her child didn't stand. Well, that doesn't go over very well with the teacher, does it? So the teacher reported this child to the principal. And upon questioning that child, they realized that this child didn't stand because of a belief that he holds. The mother had taught him that this is unacceptable. We are Muslims and we don't do things like this. Well, it didn't go over very well with the principal either. You blame them? They are kuffar. They don't understand. These are non-Muslims. Do you know where it went to eventually? Guess where it went? To the Ministry of Children. This is how it works. What about that brother who had his child in a school? And apparently things were fine. And one day, all of a sudden, he receives a call from the RCMP that we're coming to get your child's things. Now, I'm right here in the Lower Mainland. We're coming to pick up your child's belongings. He's not coming back home. Why? It went to the social worker, Ministry of Children. There was a big problem. The problem is that at home the father was telling the son he has to pray. Big problem, isn't it? I think you're getting the message. When we send our children to these schools without equipping them with proper knowledge, etc., this is what happens. These are the types of things they are exposed to. Later on in school, they are exposed to all sorts of things. They're going to learn history, are they not? They're going to learn social studies, are they not? What do you think they're going to teach them in social studies and history? When they talk about world religions, what are they going to talk about? Well, they have no choice but to mention Islam. What? When they're teaching them social studies and history, they're going to talk about the great contributions of wonderful Islamic personalities? This is not going to happen. If you think so, you're living in a dream world. I've been through the education system here, by the way, from grade 3 right up until 13 in the public school system. Grade 13 in Ontario. So I know what is taught. And I have children who are now in school. Only, alhamdulillah, they're not in the public school system. They are in my school. I homeschool them right here. And I caught something, and I have it with me. Something that our schools expect to teach our children. Alhamdulillah, I caught it because I'm the one who is teaching, so I can correct it. But how many of you even knew that this exists, that this is found in the textbooks of your children, and that your children are being taught this by their teachers? Listen to this. Life and Society in the Ancient Islamic World, part of Socials, grade 8. Right here. This is what it says. Let me quote. The Islamic world was far more civilized during the 8th and 9th centuries than Europe was. Islamic cities were centers of learning, religion, and culture. Sounds good so far, doesn't it? But look at what they're getting at afterwards. Now they're telling you that this is how civilized they were. Look at how sarcastic it is. They say then, the poor did not enjoy any of this, though, as they were often forced to live outside the city walls under desperate conditions. This is Islamic civilization they're teaching our children. Women, too, were unequal partners in Islamic society. Women who were given rights by Islam. Women who were considered to be non-humans by these same people who are trying to teach our children otherwise. As you complete your readings for this lesson, you'll see how few rights and freedoms women had. In what? In the Islamic world. In another section of the same social studies, again, I saw it just this morning with my daughter, grade 8 social studies, by the way. They talk about the different religions and how they spread. Guess what they say when it comes to Islam? When it came to Christianity, they said missionaries. And people, when they talk about missionaries, they think about what? Good work. People who went out to extend a helping hand and so on and so forth. But when it came to Islam, they said military campaigns. This is how Islam was spread. And our own so-called Muslim leaders, when they're interviewed, they say, oh, but we know that you don't believe that Islam was spread by the sword. Naam, and then we find that this is what they're teaching our children in school. In the schools, the children are taught as zina. I swear by Allah, they're taught to commit adultery and to fornicate. There are no two ways about it. I went through it. I was taught the very same thing. You don't believe me? Subhanallah. I told you already how the classes are mixed. And when they have different group studies, when they're doing certain projects and they have to split up into groups, they make certain that boys and girls sit together. When they now play sports, they want to make sure that the boys don't have a separate team and the girls don't have a separate team, but rather they are mixed. This is the reality. Besides that, you ever heard of phys ed, what you and I used to call gym at one point in time? Do you know about the many changes that have occurred in that particular subject? Do you know that they sit your boys and girls down in a classroom together and they teach them about, quote unquote, the birds and the bees? They teach them openly about sex, and they teach them that there's nothing wrong with experimenting, that there's nothing wrong with masturbation, that there's nothing wrong with having intimate relations with their classmates and with somebody of the opposite sex, but only they have to be safe about it. And so if they're thinking about doing this, then all they have to do is go down to the office of the guidance counselor and they will provide them with condoms. And they will provide them with literature that will teach them how to have same sex. Have you been to some of the high schools? Have you seen that they actually have in both the boys as well as the girls' washrooms vending machines? They don't sell pop in the washrooms. They sell condoms in the washrooms. Did you know that they are teaching them now that there's nothing wrong with homosexuality? It is a norm. For boys and girls to date and go out with one another is a norm. For boys to be intimately involved with boys and girls to be intimately involved with girls, it's a norm. There's nothing wrong with it. It's natural. This is part of growing up. But only they should practice safe sex. So don't tell me they don't teach your children zina in the school. I mean, if I were to go on, the list is endless. But let me say this, that when we look at the issue of the children being educated, and I said they're going to be bombarded with all types of things, they're going to be taught history and so on and so forth. I said earlier already that they're not going to come and tell them how Muslims contributed to science and so on and so forth for the most part. It's very rare if it's going to happen at all. Ultimately, what they're going to learn is that democracy, as it is understood by the West, this is the only right way. That Muslim countries have nothing but dictatorships. That Islam doesn't know anything about justice and about fairness. They're going to learn that Muslims are useless. And so your child is going to have an inferiority complex. Your child is not going to want to be a Muslim anymore. Your child is going to be very shy of who he or she is. And this is why your child, who you named Muhammad with such pride, when he goes outside, then he doesn't want to be known as Muhammad. He will change his name completely, either to Mike or to Mo or to Joe or to whatever else. That is why your daughter, when she goes out, then she will be ever so shy and she will wish that she could crawl under the rock. She doesn't want the others to see her, and she is dressed in her hijab. Because she's been taught on a regular basis that this is oppression. Yes, in our school system. One of our youth told me in Port Coquitlam that they had a presentation teaching them about the hijab and how it was oppressive and how it keeps the women back and so on and so forth in our schools here. In any case, as I said, the list goes on. These are the threats. What is the possible solution, or what are some possible solutions? This is a long topic also, but number one, it is clear that we have no choice but to establish Islamic schools. And I don't mean the so-called Islamic schools that exist today. Granted, the Muslim schools and the Islamic schools that we have today throughout North America and throughout the Western world, if you were to compare them with the public school system, we have to be honest and we have to be frank. There is no comparison. They are definitely better. They are the better of the two evils, though. They have a long way to go. These so-called Islamic schools, Muslim schools, have a long way to go. And you and I, we have to make certain that things are corrected in them. Not by sitting back in our homes, on our couches and complaining, but by getting involved. Rather than only criticizing, we have to try to do something practically to bring changes. We have to voice our concerns to those who are in charge of these schools. Islamic schools have to be not only established, but they have to be run properly and run by those who are fit to run them, those who are qualified, those who have a good understanding of the Sharia, those who know what the true values and morals of the Muslim are to be. Not those whom I had the misfortune of arguing with, that when I told them that we shouldn't allow our girls to be outside running about in front of everybody, in front of the men and in front of the boys, with their t-shirts and their tight pants, that individual who happened to be on the school board says to me, "What, are you a pervert? What, you have no you have nothing better to do in your time than to sit and watch the girl's breast?" This is what they say. These are the people that are running your Islamic and your Muslim schools. I've had run-ins with them myself, first-hand. I'm not giving you second-hand reports. These Islamic schools, Muslim schools, are a necessity, but they have to be run as well, properly. And you, don't blame anybody. Get involved and try to bring about the changes. Nobody's going to deport you for speaking. Some of us, I don't know, we have that backward mentality, thinking that because we object to something, something's going to happen to us. Do it for the sake of Allah. Nobody's doing anything to you. Something else. Why have we abandoned the option of homeschooling? I'll tell you why. Because we're lazy. We don't have time. Because we love the dunya. And we really don't care about our kids, no matter how much we say it. This is why. A sad reality. This is it. I cannot find any other answer. Our women, they want to be liberated from what? From responsibility. This is all. We have to send our women folk out to work because that second vehicle has to be there. Because we need a bigger, not need, because we want a bigger house. We feel that we have to have it. So all of us have to work. And we have to work 3 jobs a day if we have to, but we have to bring in enough to support that high living. But for our children's education, we're not willing to sacrifice. We're not willing to give of our time and to lose sleep teaching them ourselves. So that these types of things, like what I read to you a while ago from the social studies course, can be caught by us, and so we can correct it. We're not willing to do it. We're too busy. We're too busy for our future. We ourselves are to blame that our children are losing their Islamic identity because we don't want to bring them up as Muslims. Not as true Muslims anyways. So many have ruled out that option. Why? As I said, because we're lazy. End of story. Others, let's be fair and just. They would love to do that. However, they are not capable. So what should they do? They have no choice in many cases but to send them to the public school. This is a reality we have to live as well. You cannot send them to the Muslim school because you can't afford it, for example. And You cannot homeschool because perhaps you don't have the ability to teach them. Whatever your handicap may be, whether it be the language issue, whether it be that you're a single parent and you have no choice. Either, you can't starve, or whatever else your excuse may be, which is a valid one. So what do? You have no choice but to send them to the public schools. But what happens before you send them to that school? How are you raising your children? Are you teaching them Islam, not only with your words, but with your actions as well? If you are, then believe me, they can be protected when they go outside, to a very large extent. Are you following up and going to the school and meeting with the teachers and informing them how your children cannot participate in so many of their activities? Most of us don't do it. Are you sending constantly notes to the teacher that I know Thanksgiving is coming, my child will not be involved in any of those activities? Christmas is coming, my child doesn't have anything to do with it. In art class, when you're drawing Santa Claus, my child draws something else. Forget about Santa Claus or Christmas trees or anything of that nature. This season is coming up, Valentine's now. Naam, we have issues now. Our daughters who are in grade 3 and 4 want to be involved in Valentine's celebrations. Naam. Just today, my son doesn't even know it, but he received an email from his teacher, Happy Valentine's Day, and recommendations of what to do on that day. I could catch it. I deleted it, and he's not going to see it. In the school, how many of you sent those notes and before that spoke to your children and let them know that our celebrations and our Eids, they are only 2 in the year, and so on and so forth? So then when it comes to these other issues, when it comes to Valentine's, you let them know, because this is what is coming up. They know that its origins are from pagan rituals, from the mushrikeen, and that it is a filthy thing, and that it is not becoming of a Muslim. Of course, you teach the different children at different levels according to their level. And you send the notes, and you keep your children back from school on those days when you know that they're going to have those celebrations and they're going to be distributing cards, and they have names that they have to choose, and then they have to give, every boy gets the name of a girl, and vice versa, and you have to give that girl or you have to give that boy a gift, a heart-shaped chocolate, a card with a picture of the Cupid on it, and so on and so forth. How many of us follow up with the school, with the teachers, and let them know that this is something we have zero tolerance for? Believe me, and I did it myself, because in the very early years, before even grade 3, we're talking about kindergarten, then we did this with our children for the first 2 years when they were in that system. And then we really woke up. We used to follow up with the teachers, and then a note would come from the teacher, or a phone call would come from the teacher saying that, listen, Mr. Kathrada, tomorrow we have this and this and this. Perhaps you want to keep your child at home. If you are active, if you really care and you follow up, then you will be able to protect your child to some extent. Even then, there's great danger, because the child is going to be exposed to all of these things, and they're going to be mocked by their friends, and they're going to be insulted, and they're going to be called weird, and so on and so forth. But you know what? Sometimes you don't have a choice. And so you have to make certain that you are a great support for your child when the child comes home. Don't be like those who, when they come home, oh, forget it, they didn't mean it, You speak to them and you make them understand. This is why they are saying these things to you. This is what the reality is. And that you have to be strong, and we are Muslims, and we have to be proud, and you have to feel sorry for them. They are the ones who are the losers. Many things that we have to learn. I haven't even covered maybe a third of what I wanted to this afternoon. As I said, it's something which is very close to me, this type of a subject, something which troubles me a great deal, and this is why I've opened it. So perhaps, inshallah ta'ala, we will continue next week, and even the week after, if need be, talking about this topic of preserving that Islamic identity. But I want each and every one of us to understand something. Preserving that Islamic identity is not a choice. It is a necessity. It is something that we all must do. Preserving the Islamic identity is actually preserving your religion. This is what it boils down to. Otherwise, how many times have I told you? The fear is what? The fear is that tomorrow we will see those children of ours and we will hear from them words such as the ones that we are already hearing. My parents used to be Muslim. My parents used to be Muslim. Is this what you want to hear from your children? Otherwise, you're going to see what we see now. Leave alone the children, many of the grown-ups. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, because we had weak iman to begin with, and we came to this society, and we're being bombarded left, right, and center, the media, inshallah we'll talk about that the next time. Then they're shy to mention that they are Muslims before anyone. But when somebody asks them, are you a Muslim? They say, no. And they may even mock Islam just to make it clear to the person before them that really I'm not a Muslim. They hate being Muslim. They don't want to be identified as Muslims. And there's a funny story here. That one of the brothers mentioned it to me just a few days ago. That an individual of Arabic heritage, right here in North America, comes to work always with a big cross around his neck. He is a Christian. He's not a Muslim, he's a Christian. And even still, that individual is not treated the same as everybody else. Subhanallah, because of his cultural background, they still consider him to be an outsider. He does everything he can to try and fit in, and yet he is rejected. Take lesson from that. It doesn't matter how you try to hide your identity. You are not going to be accepted. They will never accept you, and they will never be pleased with you. Be rest assured of that. Nonetheless, I will leave it at this for this afternoon, and as I said, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we will continue with this the next time. And I do sincerely apologize should anybody have been offended. But understand that I did not mean offense. Understand that I'm speaking to you as a true brother should speak to a true brother and sister. I'm speaking to you from the bottom of my heart. I'm mentioning to you things that I have experienced and that I'm constantly observing, and things that are coming to my attention on a daily basis. So beg of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive me for anything that I may have said or done that is not correct. And I beg of Allah Jalla wa Ala to grant myself and all of you a much better understanding of our deen, and to make us of those who are proud of who we are, and those who will maintain and preserve our Islamic identity. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Make space for your brothers, please. In the library as well, please try to make extra space for your brothers. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله، وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. وعليكم أيها المسلمون بالجماعة، فإن يد الله على الجماعة ومن شذ شذ في النار. واعلموا أن الجماعة هي التمسك بالكتاب والسنة وبمنهج الصحابة الكرام رضوان الله تعالى عليهم أجمعين. يا ابن آدم أحبب ما شئت فإنك مفارقه، واعمل ما شئت فإنك ملاقيه، وكن كما شئت فكما تدين تدان. ثم صلوا وسلموا على خاتم النبيين وإمام المرسلين، فقد أمركم الله بذلك في كتابه المبين، فقال جل من قائل: إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. وقال عليه الصلاة والسلام: من صلى علي واحدة صلى الله عليه بها 10. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك وأنعم على عبدك ورسولك محمد، وارض اللهم عن الخلفاء الراشدين أبي بكر وعمر وعثمان وعلي، وعن سائر الصحابة والتابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وأذل الكفرة والمشركين. اللهم دمر أعداء الدين وأهلك الزنادقة والملحدين. اللهم اغفر لجميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات، إنك سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات ورافع الدرجات برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم فرج هم المهمومين ونفس كرب المكروبين وقض الدين عن المدينين، واشف اللهم مرضى المسلمين وارحم موتاهم أجمعين يا رحمن يا رحيم. اللهم انصر المجاهدين في سبيلك في كل مكان. اللهم ثبت أقدامهم واربط على قلوبهم وأنزل السكينة عليهم وانصرهم على عدوهم وعدوك يا عزيز يا قوي. اللهم انصر إخواننا المستضعفين في كل مكان. اللهم خذ بأيديهم وعجل بنصرهم يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه، وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم أصلح حال المسلمين. اللهم أصلح لنا شبابنا. اللهم أصلح لنا نساءنا. اللهم أصلح أحوال المسلمين. اللهم ردنا إليك ردا جميلا. اللهم ردنا إلى دينك ردا جميلا. اللهم ألف بين قلوبنا ووحد صفوفنا واجمع كلمتنا على الحق يا رب العالمين. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. لئن لم يغفر لنا ربنا ويرحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. سبحان ربك